Greetings everyone, I am Talisman and welcome to my galaxy. And today we're going to review a movie called No One Will Save You. The movie No One Will Save You is a sci-fi thriller um, home invasion / alien abduction sort of story. And you get a sense of that from the very get-go. It's written, produced, and directed by Brian Duffield. You may recognise his name because he's the writer for the 2020 movie Underwater, starring Kristen Stewart. And he's also the director, producer, and writer for the movie Spontaneous, which came out in 2020 as well. So with this review, I should say, I'm going to break it up into three parts: the plot and a bit about details about the movie, which are all going to be spoiler free. There's no spoilers in this movie review whatsoever. Then I'm going to move on to the pros and cons, and then I'm going to talk about my overall score right at the very end. So the movie is an hour and a half long, which I thought was a pretty good runtime overall. The plot involves Brienne Adams, the main character, who's portrayed by Kaitlyn Dever. Now, Kaitlyn, if you're not familiar with her work, was one of the characters she played one of the characters in the TV show Last Man Standing. Prior to this, I had very little knowledge of her, but I will get on to her acting and all that sort of thing in a moment once we get to the pros and cons sort of thing. With the plot, it's basically her living alone in a house. We're not sure if it's a family home or anything like that, because there's really no dialogue within this movie. There's a few words spoken, but they're more towards the end of the movie, but there's really no dialogue. She lives alone, and the community seems to be against her. She's feeling quite isolated and alone. But if you look at Kaitlyn's portrayal of Bryn in the movie, Bryn is wearing a very period clothing, so probably from 1960s, 1970s, the clothing, sundresses and all this sort of thing. She is listening to older style music and dancing in waltz sort of style by herself in the living room, which gives me the sort of sense that she's trying to connect to a time where neighbours knew each other. There was more of a community, more of a friendly sort of environment, which is a contrast because she lives by herself and is disconnected from the town that she's in. And you see that within the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes of the movie. So that's part of it. And then the rest of the plot follows that she has a home invasion and is stalked and hunted by these aliens that are after her. That's basically the entire plot. So moving on to the pros of the entire story. Kaitlyn's portrayal of her character and all that, even though there's no or very little words spoken, from the moment the movie starts, is brilliant. She, as an actress in this particular movie, her acting was on point to me. She conveyed a lot of emotion. She had you feeling the fear that she was feeling. You could sense the whole tension that she was feeling, the fear of being alone and stuck, trapped in this house with this thing following her. It's really, really creepy in that respect. And she portrayed it really well. Her emotion was fantastic. Her acting skills, fantastic. I could not fault her when it came to this movie. The use of no dialogue in this movie, I felt helped it. There was a couple of times where it hindered it, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But I felt that it was good enough to carry the suspense. Now, this movie is not about jump scares. It's not about gore or anything like that. There is none of that. It's more suspense. And there's two scenes that stand out to me the most when it comes to this movie. And within the first 5 minutes of it, not only do you get a sense of who Kaitlyn is and feeling that she is alone in this situation, but unlike other horror movies, you get to see the alien straight away. To me, which is really good. You don't need to hide it because it is supposed to be the main antagonist of this situation. It's supposed to be scary. I can't praise that part enough. One of the parts that really stood out to me, and you see it in the trailer, is this shot where Kaitlyn is out in the hallway. Oh, sorry, it's this hallway around this stairwell sort of thing leading down into the main lobby area of the house where the front door is. The front door is open, and she can see the foot of whatever this thing is moving around and disappear from sight. And then she decides to back up and goes into her room. And when she gets into the room, she goes and hides under the bed. Now, there's a beautiful shot, and this is what I was saying that stood out to me. There's a beautiful shot of her hiding under the bed, and you're pretty much looking from the window perspective towards the front door. You can see her under the bed. The door opens up, and you see the alien. It's what you would describe as alien looking, or what they describe as a typical alien in this. But there's some features that are hidden from this particular angle because it's only just looking at it. You don't see all the finer details until it gets a bit closer. But this thing is scary enough that it can move really fast. You can hear it run when it comes moving around the house. You can hear it run. But throughout the entire time that it's chasing her, yes, it moves fast, but there's times where it's just walking. It's slow. It's methodical in its approach to things. And to me, that's scarier than actually having something fast-paced. Something that is slow walking, something that knows that you're there, it's just a matter of time to find you. That to me is more scary than actually something that's running at you and you're trying to get away. Because you know that this thing doesn't care about time. It's got all the time in the world, And the use of the music, the lighting, the camera angles, the silhouettes, the sounds that this thing makes, it just adds to the whole atmosphere that you're feeling. There is another shot. It's not as iconic as that particular one where she's under the bed. And it's not as iconic as the one I'm going to mention about very soon. But there's a shot where she's trying to crawl down the hallway to get away from it towards the front door. And it just walks down the hallway very slowly towards her. Creepy enough that you can see it and you're cheering for it. You're on the edge of the seat going, oh, I found myself on the edge of the seat going, come on, get up, run, get out there. And to see it actually there and having this menacing feeling about it, to me was top notch. It was really good. The fear that you felt and it conveyed by Kaitlyn doing her portrayal of this character, once again, it was on point. It made you feel and connect with her. There was times where I was watching this movie and I was on the edge of the seat going, run, come on. And then I was calling out. I found myself actually talking to myself going, well, if I was in this situation, what would I do? And to me, that felt like that was motivating me. I was that invested, not only in the performance, but the story as it went on. And then as the plot continues and goes on, you start to get a sense that, okay, there's more going on that's making her feel isolated and why she's isolated. And that added to that atmosphere. And once again, no dialogue. It is all visually shown. The fact that there's more than one alien in this, which is no big secret, no surprise, no spoiler. And they're all different shapes and sizes. Some are fast, small and vicious. Some are larger and just complete nuts. And there's others that are walking around that are very slow, methodical and tactical in their approach. And I like that. Now, when I say they're tactical and knowledgeable, the second scene that really stood out to me and really hit hard for me, there's a scene where she's hiding in the basement, trying to keep out of the sight of one of the aliens that's lurking around. And she can see it. And she's trying to stay hidden behind these pillars in the basement. And as it's walking around, she's trying to move herself around to keep out of its view, but keep it in view as well. And there was one scene in it where she actually grabs a pair of scissors and she ducks down underneath. It looks like a bit of a desk, table sort of area, but it's wide open. So she's crouched down underneath it. And as the camera pans and you can see her sitting there behind her with this light coming off it, is the silhouette of the alien just standing there watching her. And it's like one of those moments where you see the look in Kaitlyn's eyes as she's portraying this character going, it's behind me, isn't it? Like there's no one else there to help her. She is completely alone, but it's like this, it's there. Creepy enough to scare you just a little bit, but not enough to make you go, oh my God, a heart attack. You know, it was just suspenseful. And to me, I love that about this movie. The suspense, the fact that I was calling out going, what would I do in this situation? I would do this. I would, you know, and wanting to know how she's going to react. What would she do and how she is doing it? Why she's doing it, you know? There's another beautiful scene which really stood out to me. It's not as iconic as the first two where she's hiding under the bed and in the basement, but this one really stood out to me as very clever. She's got these pots of water and she's boiling them up. And as this creature or one of the aliens comes to her, she's actually using that as a weapon. And to me, it was something that I never thought of as a viewer. And it started to make me wonder what she was doing with it when she first started doing it. But seeing it and realizing that you're using whatever you can as a weapon, that to me is brilliant. The survival of this movie, it was great. It had enough tension to keep you there, but not enough to scare the living daylights out of you. So to me, that's all pros, sorry. They're all pros. But to the cons now. The cons of the movie relate to the dialogue. Yes, there was very little to no dialogue in this movie. I thought that hindered it slightly because there's parts of it where you're trying to connect the dots of Kaitlyn's backstory and to why she's so disliked by her town from the start of the movie. And you get the big picture of it. You still can piece it together, but it would just be nice to have that word to actually fully concrete everything together. That, to me, is a con, but I'm nitpicking with that. The biggest con that I found was that the first 3/4 of the movie was suspenseful. Everything was great. As it got to the end of the movie, it became ambiguous. And when it came to the conclusion of the movie, I was sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, do they mean this? Do they mean this? Do they mean this? Or is it this? And I could be completely wrong with all of my guesses because it was left ambiguous. There was a conclusion to it, and there was no cliffhanger. Like, it wasn't as if to say, oh my God, there's going to be a sequel or something like that. But it was just left to say, okay, can you fill in the blanks? Because I don't fully understand what happened there. What transitioned from this to this? That is probably my biggest con. But then again, it also worked for it because, as ambiguous as it is, it left it open for you to fill in the blanks, which kind of is good, but to me, it's also a negative, you know? That was probably my biggest criticism of the entire movie. Other than that, yeah, it was brilliant. I loved it. If I was going to score this out of 10, obviously 10 being the highest, I would give it a 7, only because the first 3/4 of the movie was brilliant. To me, suspenseful. There was action in it, but it wasn't action as in ridiculous or over the top. It made sense. The aliens, to me, were the selling point when it came to the fear factor. A lot of the things they did, you sort of went, okay, wow, you're dealing with something that is scary enough to be considered hard to face and beat, but at the same time, beatable. They are just as weak when it came to their frail bodies as what we are, you know? And to me, that was a good counterpoint. They're intelligent, they're methodical, they are very cunning at what they do, and their abilities are really standing out, but they can be beaten. They can be beaten. And I love that about that movie. And Kaitlyn, as an actress, once again, I cannot praise her enough for her role in this movie. She was fantastic in everything she did. And yeah, I can't praise it any more than that. Now, this movie did come out on Disney Plus in Australia, Hulu in America. It came out on the 22nd of September. I watched it last night, which was the 22nd of October, so a month later. And I'm a bit late getting this review out, but for me, this was a highlight, and I highly recommend, even if you just watch it for the first 3/4 of the movie, like just to get that sense, that'd be worth it. The ending, like I said, it wasn't the best, but it wasn't the worst. It was a conclusion, but ambiguous for me anyway. Yeah, please give it a look at and see what you think yourself if you're interested in it. Otherwise, I will catch you next time for my next video. Take care.